Hi, team. Phil Shomo here with Phil Shomo Coaching again. So great to have you join again for another interview in my forever learning pursuit. And today is a really special interview. I'm so excited for you to listen to this. You know, in the world of golf, especially, and this applies to all different parts of life, but it's really easy to get obsessed with one particular aspect of the game or developing improvement or performance and sort of get dragged into this idea that that specific aspect is what's going to make or break my performance. In golf, we typically tend to lean into the development of the technique, the swing, the putting stroke, the chipping motion, the various physical dynamics that are related to hitting the ball really far, hitting the ball really clean, controlling the ball flight. And while all of that has a vital role to play in the game, it's so easy to assume that if we master the swing or master the techniques, then it'll automatically equate to fantastic performance. So when we aren't performing well, we typically then come back to the swing and the technique as being the primary solution to fixing our problems. So we're forever fixing and tinkering and trying to develop and get better. And again, all of that is very, very good for growth and progress, but it's not the only portion of development and improvement. Today's guest, Mark Immelman. Mark Immelman, who is, we hear regularly on the CBS Sports broadcast. He's currently one of the on-course commentators for the PGA Tour broadcast network when it's broadcast on CBS. And Mark, in this interview, talks about how, in his experience and his observations up close, the best performances, the elite performers, really master the intersection of what he calls holistic golf. And that's the development of the physical, but it's also the intersection of the physical with the spiritual, with the mental, and with the emotional. And when these pieces come together, where they meet is where great performance can take place. And I think his insights are just dead on. I'm so excited for you to listen to this. I'll just tell you a little bit about Mark. Mark has extensive background in the game. Mark grew up in South Africa, started playing the game very early on, was a college player, three-time All-American at Columbus State down in Georgia. And after college, he's done everything from being an author to an agent. He's been a swing instructor for multiple Masters champions, in particular his brother Trevor. He's also worked with Larry Mize among many, many other pros on the swing instructor side. He's been a coach at Columbus State down in Georgia now for a number of years, and they've had a great amount of success. And then most recently, Mark has become known in the broadcasting world. He was one of the original broadcasters when the PGA Tour Live first launched. He's worked on various aspects of the broadcasting world and until now currently is part of the primary CBS crew for broadcasting the PGA Tour. Mark is also an extensive podcast guy. His On the Mark podcast, one of the biggest and best podcasts in the golfing world, has over 400 episodes. I had the honor of being interviewed by Mark recently for his podcast, and we just had a great, great time. But I think this interview that I do with him is just packed with gold. I can't wait for you to hear this. Let's get into it. Mark Immelman. All right, welcome back. It is so good to have a new friend of mine that I've been getting to know recently, Mr. Mark Immelman, a very familiar voice, especially to a lot of the golf world. And hopefully those of you that are getting to see the video version of this, there is a face behind the voice. Welcome, Mark. Good to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me. Please don't call me Mister, because when you use that term, I look for my dad around the place. And, no, I'm just Mark. Sometimes go by Coach, but Mark, and it's a thrill to be with you. And I must say, you joining me on my podcast. It was downloaded, folks were going after it, and there was so much positive feedback. So thank you for returning the favor.
Oh, you're welcome. That was so much fun. So much fun. So, Mark Immelman, just in case people don't know, and they may not know all of it. So, this man has PGA Tour live experience, still involved in that game, some Golf Channel stuff, CBS Sports, on course broadcaster for PGA Tour, college golf coach at Columbus State, Georgia, golf instructor, author, former agent, podcast guru.
You'd think I could find something and settle on it, right? I mean, goodness gracious. Oh Lord.
Well, here's the most beautiful thing, Mark, and I think you've settled on this. So I have seen pictures of two beautiful girls, Isabel and Sophia, I believe are the names. And you just celebrated 18 years with Tracy, your wife.
Yeah.
So, man, if you're going to settle on something, settle on that. That is a beautiful family.
Well, there's no doubt that the smartest thing I've ever done was ask Tracy to marry me, and thankfully she agreed. And it's been some sort of a ride. I mean, it feels like just the other day that we were still dating in 1999, and now many moons later, we're in the United States, citizens over here now, and two young daughters. I'm a girl dad, which is a thing. I love it. It's challenging. It runs me through a gamut of emotions all the time, and loving every minute of it.
That's awesome. You got two girls. I've got two boys, no girls. So, maybe I can learn a lot from you. Maybe we can share knowledge on the sides of parenting that we don't either one have any experience in.
Okay. This whole girl thing. There's certain questions that I just go, ask your mom. And then there are other things where sort of the coach in me can come out, and the dad and the protector and that sort of thing. But there's certain deals with girl that are just way beyond my understanding and pay grade.
Boy, isn't that the truth? The wise man speaks right there. So, so my emphasis on all my interviews is just this phrase, forever learning. I want to be in that mode of always growing, always learning, always getting better. And that's what's really fun for me. I hope people who listen into this get something out of this. But honestly, selfishly, this is just for me. This is my own education. So it's a lot of fun. I think it was Cameron McCormick, Jordan Spieth's coach, that I heard say this, and I kind of just stole it and reworked it. But I love this phrase that success, and I actually think failure does this too, but success leaves a trail of breadcrumbs that mark the path if we will go back and look for them. And that's partly why I love talking to people who have experience in the sports world, is just the trail of breadcrumbs from their own journey. You've had your own journey, and your journey's been pretty deep in golf. So why don't you let's just start. Just tell us a little bit about, go all the way back. Like, how did you get started in the game? What made you fall in love with golf? And what's kept you passionate about being involved in it all these years?
You know what, Phil? I guess at its root, it's probably just pure serendipity. I mean, I've sensed, something bigger than me ever since I first got into golf, and I got into the game because, look, I was a useful athlete. I was a good cricketer and a good tennis player over in South Africa, and we do everything over there. I played rugby in the winter and cricket and tennis in the summer, and I had a bad rugby injury, and because I've always been small, and it's a big boys game, and my coach then, I had to go in for a procedure to have my wrist reset. Basically, it was broken so badly. And so I remember being on the gurney going into the theater, and my coach showed up and said to my parents, look, Mark is a good rugby player, but he's not big enough to play this game at this level. And I'm going to recommend, and this is the wise coach, I guess, my first brush with wise coaching. He was like, I recommend that rugby is no longer a part of his future. And at the time, I guess that was a bitter pill to swallow. But that turned into one weekend, funny enough, as once the cast had come off my arm from the procedure, my friends in the neighborhood were just like, well, we're going down to the golf courses today. Do you want to come? And I was like, sure. And I'm a left-hander, and my dad had a right-handed set of clubs in the garage, and he said, well, have at it. And so off I went, and the proverbial bug bit, I guess, and I got good pretty quickly, I think, just through sheer athleticism. And then and golf became a part of who I am. And obviously from there, it morphed into a big part of who our family is, with my younger brother, Trevor. And then fast forward uh, to the army in South Africa, which was mandatory back then, but I played on the Defense Force golf team. And then I realized I wasn't good enough to play professional golf just yet. So I caddied for a while. And through the caddying, I met a young American professional called Tommy Tolles, who played over there and was successful. And then a friend of his called Hugh Royer came over to play, and Tommy was taking the week off. I was working for him, and he said, pick up Hugh's bag. And so we connected, and I did, and he was successful. And we played golf one time, and he's like, what are you doing caddying? And I said to him, I'm like, well, it's all I kind of know how to do right now. And so he said, well, why don't you go to college? And I said, well, how do you do that? I'm from South Africa. College in America feels like it's a million miles away. And lo and behold, I mean, his dad was the professional at Bull Creek Golf Course in Columbus, Georgia, where I would end up. And he was a national champion there. And he called up the coach then, the then coach Earl Bagley, Dr. Earl Bagley, who just on a whim saw a video of me, called my dad back then, 1990-ish, and offered me a scholarship. And I went over, was successful there for 4 years, graduated, back to the European tour. I worked as an agent for IMG for a while, but I was always into the game, and I started teaching. And then Coach Bagley, lo and behold, phoned me back up and said, hey, the job at Columbus State's going as a coach. Do you want to come and join us? And it was a way for me to continue on as an instructor, but a way to get into the United States, because this is where the game is at its biggest, and there's the most opportunities. And so I came over. My then girlfriend Tracy and we came over, and I interviewed for the job, and thankfully was offered the job. And then I proposed to her, and we moved over here in 2001. And I've been the college coach at Columbus State since 2012. I got on a whim, just got into live radio announcing for the PGA Tour. Again, just purely God's hand in the whole thing. And that morphed into a gig with PGA Tour Live. And then folks there from CBS noticed me doing work there. And, the accent adds like 10 IQ points. And I guess in looking back now, Phil, all the golf lessons I've given, and the coaching that I've done, and the caddying that I've done, and the little bit of agency work that I've done, sort of uniquely qualify me to take a very different view on golf. And so with my accent and with my experiences, it makes me, I guess, a worthwhile announcer. So here we are. It feels like it happened overnight, but it was a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice on Tracy's behalf. And it's been a crazy ride, looking back on it all.
Well, you and I just met recently and had a chance to spend some time over coffee when you were here on Hilton Head for the tournament. And part of what I'm discovering, I think I sort of intuitively knew this from listening to especially your podcast for so long. But I think what I'm picking up on now is I love that diversity of background. And I think that helps shape a perspective that makes you a very interesting person. So within the game and probably outside the game, but we haven't talked a lot about that. So let me
funny?
just, yeah, go ahead.
Just to that, you do this to me. You get my mind spinning, and I find it curious that you find the diversity in all of my perspectives interesting.
Yeah.
Yet, us human beings, we have this strange sense about ourselves where I'm like, am I really worthy of what I'm doing? Am I worthy of this position? And I've got to catch myself daily to sort of say, hey, you've been put here for a unique reason. And even though you might not believe in yourself, you've got to go ahead and really, make yourself available for people.
Well, even that right there, even that self-awareness, that humility, that to me is that's a magnetic kind of thing. So at least for me, I'm very drawn to understanding and learning from people who demonstrate that kind of thing. So it leads right into the first thing I said to you when we sat down at breakfast, I think, was you've become, in my mind, you've become known for using the word holistic in terms of golf as much as anybody I've heard or known out there, which is to me both fascinating, interesting, and honestly inspiring way to approach golf and or life. So, would you just give us a little bit of you use the word all the time on your podcast. You often will mention some of the aspects of what you mean by holistic, but I'd love to hear you a little more behind that. Both what does it mean and how do you think you came to looking at the game that way?
Well, first off, to the second part of your question, I came to this realization just having the benefit of hindsight, looking back at my playing career, because I guess if you had to catch me at a weak moment, I would say to you that I was probably good enough to play at the very highest level, physically talent wise, but I went barking up the wrong tree when it came to improvement. I hung my hat on, well, if I'm going to be better, I'm going to improve my golf swing. Where now looking back on it all and having had the benefit of spending some time around some fantastic minds and high achievers in both golf and life and business, it's occurred to me that there's more to it than that. Um, it's just not a physical endeavor, anything really, especially sports. And the great achievers, they're those folks that have the whatever it is. It's that immeasurable where when the chips are down, they show up, and they have this ability to be able to navigate adversity and not lose their positive attitude. They have this ability to be able to, dig down deep when you're going through the grind of practice. They have this sense to be able to realize that sometimes, I've done my best, but it just wasn't good enough on the day. But that doesn't mean that I was a failure. And so there's all these sorts of things that looking back and having spoken to people and watched people closely, it's occurred to me that success at the highest level is honestly, in my opinion, happens at the intersection of the physical attributes, the spiritual attributes, the mental attributes, and certainly the emotional attributes. And so when those things are all jarring, you have these individuals that can operate at the highest of levels. And not that they get there all of the time, but it is, I am convinced of the fact, and I will take it to my grave, that you can work until you're blue in the face. It's like my trainer always says to me, he goes, Mark, you can work out in the gym all you like, but you've got to make sacrifices in the kitchen as well. And so that's part of this thing, to get into shape and to be healthy. It's not just working out; it's working out and eating right and being hydrated. And there's, it's so golf to me is just a microcosm of that all.
Wow, man, I love the language. I love the intersection language. That to me is that's just so rich and so intriguing. And it almost feels like, which I think is part of why I'm drawn to try to get more and more involved in doing mental skills coaching with golfers, because it's like an unending exploration that's much like the golf game. It's like mastery is the pursuit of mastery is what's fun. It's
Yeah.
not just the pursuit of accomplishment, although they're very closely intertwined. Obviously, the pursuit of mastery, though, what do you think of when I use words like mastery and even at the intersection of a holistic kind of approach?
I love the term the use mastery. I mean, the one thing that I see great achievers do, and when it comes to mastery of stuff, they're not trying to master the physical skills. They're trying to master, or maybe they've come upon this by accident, or whatever the case might be. It's mastery of self, and how you deal with success, how you deal with failure, how you maintain your focus, how you regain your focus, and all these sorts of things. And the one thing that the masters are fine with is that if failure happens, they don't take ownership of it. And if success happens, they don't necessarily take ownership of it either.
Wow.
They are themselves, and they are not what or what they've done or what they've achieved. You know,
Wow. Mm.
the individuals that are chasing after the achievements, I mean, to me, that's a really short avenue. You know, it's going to end with disappointment, because if you're constantly chasing after achievement, you know, they'll be let down. You'll be outdone by somebody, and then lifting yourself up from the canvas is difficult. But folks that are trying to master themselves, like you say, it's never ending, and it takes your focus away from, well, I got a bad break there, or that guy beat me, or I was
Right.
unlucky, or whatever the case might be, because
Right.
you're just doing you, and you're trying to maximize yourself, because in the end, I mean, that's all you really have to draw on, right?
Yeah. Again, man, love the phrase that it's mastery of yourself.
Mm.
I think you're giving us a master class. What you're doing right now, Mark.
I don't, you know what? I don't know, and that's what great achievers also, in my experience. I mean, this is not gospel. It seems to me like they're okay with themselves if things don't work out. There will be aggravation, there will be frustration, all these sorts of emotions. Those are completely normal, but it's always like, okay, something's worked out, great. If something hasn't worked out, it's okay. I'll just get up and do what I know to do again. So it's the
Love it.
consistency of the approach, I guess.
I love it. Well, I'm going to pivot just a little bit. I don't think it's too much, though. Honestly, I think it's still kind of in the same universe. You've been involved in college golf, like you said, for quite a few years. You were very successful All American and have built a very strong D2 program. Um, I because I do a fair amount of work with college golfers and young golfers. I'm very interested in how you would look at this question. So there, in my mind, there is a clear differentiator at some point between really elite college or junior golfers and good college or junior golfers. And that differentiator, I think, tends to show up the most in the highest pressure situations, which, as you know, is something I'm very interested in. So, from your both experience, you were a great college golfer, but you've been coaching now for a number of years at a very successful and built a very successful program. What kinds of things would you say are differentiators between the elite college golfer and the good college golfer? And we might not even notice them as much until those moments really come, and then you've seen it.
Well, at the outset, it may sound trite, but honestly, it is the sacrifice of it all. It's the individual being prepared to make the uncomfortable decisions and sacrificing things that someone else might not be able to. Because I've seen it a lot, where you have a very talented athlete that lacks work ethic and the ability to sacrifice, you know, like a hedonistic lifestyle, if you will, and that person's ceiling is minimal. Whereas on the other hand, if you have the person with some talent who's prepared to work and prepared to sacrifice and prepared to do the hard stuff, that individual's ceiling is greater. Now, the successful one is that blue chip athlete, physically gifted, who has the work ethic, who has the desire, who has the, and again, I use the term sacrifice a lot, because there'll be times that you have to make decisions, and everything really is, and that individual will make the decision that lines up with the goals. Because a lot of, you know, everyone talks about goal setting, as you well know, and goal setting is fine to write stuff down on the paper, and it's all romantic and stuff like that. But to use your term, the shadow side of this good thing is that, like, okay, well, that's the goal. What have I got to do to achieve this? And some of the stuff you've got to do is just not nice, and it's not comfortable. And so the high achievers I see they're prepared to do that. And then just from a physical standpoint, when it comes to golf, they might not necessarily be the best hitter of a golf ball ever, but they have a very acute mind, and their golf IQ, their sports IQ is high. They're able to look upon a situation and make the savvy decision. They're able to look upon the practice session and not fall for the romantic, easy stuff to work. They'll go and address the things that need real addressing. They'll be the folks that will take a very pragmatic view upon a day or a tournament or a round and assess the thing from an objective point of view, not subjective. And then they will look upon this, not get phased by it, not
Yeah.
own failure, and look and say, well, here's the data. This is what I've got to do. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach, but at its root, I would say you've got someone who's comfortable with working hard, who's prepared to sacrifice, and then who just has got a pretty sound brain on their heads. Because I would rather have a not smart, it's not smart, just a wise athlete than just an athlete. If you're just an athlete, I'll give you someone to go and block and tackle, right? But if you want to play some sports like golf at the highest level, you have to be pretty cerebral and have a good understanding of everything.
Oh man, I could, yeah, to use your phrase, I could drop anchor on about five different things you just said. But I'm gonna spin in a slightly different direction. So, for my Phil Shomo coaching business, I adopted the tagline "Adversity to Advantage," and just trying to lean into this idea that what we think is an obstacle, what we think is a failure, what we think is something that's against us can actually become the pathway to growth and learning and success.
Mhm.
And in light of that, what would be an example that you would think of maybe from your own journey that would have been at the time a hard thing, maybe even a
Mhm.
failure or a just an absolute sort of train wreck kind of moment it seemed like. But hindsight's 2020 and you've had all these experiences now and you reflect back on it and you say, man, at that time, I could have had no idea how important the lesson I would learn from that or the direction that would take me has
Mhm.
played out in my life. Just give us a taste of a human experience of how adversity has actually been leveraged as advantage in your own journey.
And there, off the top of my head, there are multiple instances, but the one that really sort of comes to the forefront is as a small college coach, um, a small university college coach, they allowed me to give golf lessons on the side to supplement income, basically, right? So it's an economic decision. And I live in Columbus, Georgia, and in the summer times there are it's like purgatory. I mean, it is so hot, so humid. There's very little wind, and so thankfully, um, I was successful as a golf instructor now, not a college coach. And so folks would come to me for lessons, and I had a very full lesson book. I wouldn't work on Sundays, but I was basically giving lessons from like 9 until 6 every day with no break. And and folks were just lining up, which looking back was such a blessing because it brought financial gain, which is obviously important. But I remember many a summertime coming home from work and just being absolutely exhausted. Then waking up the following morning and almost hoping for rain so I could just kind of get out of the heat and recover a little bit. And it was a grueling time. And this, as I look back, I don't know how many years it was, but I think, it certainly was from about 2005 through, when my radio career began was in like 2013, so like 8 years. And I was full time giving lessons all of the time, and it wore me out. And I, I, I didn't not love the golf instruction, but I burned out on it, just physically, not emotionally or mentally, just physically. And looking back on that now, um, all that trial, all that tribulation, all of that hard work, and I know people listening to this going, "Whatever, man, you're giving golf lessons." Just the grueling nature of the heat, the humidity, the whole day long outside there. Um, I looked and I got to a place where I didn't want to do it really. Now I look back on this and I'm like, every single one of those lessons, it was like my desert time, if you will. Every single one of those lessons and finding ways or understanding a person's currency, being able to find a way to communicate with them so the message would be received. Because I don't care how good a teacher I am, I'm only as good as what my message is understood
Yeah,
and then applied. Um,
absolutely.
that time molded me and molded my communication skills and helped me to be able to communicate in different ways to different people. And now looking back on all of this now as an announcer, that's essentially what I do. And so because of these lessons, I've learned the art of brevity. Doesn't sound like it at times, but I can make a call pretty fast and say something that is sensible. So I think that's the one that jumps out is of all of those years in that the grueling summers out there in Georgia, giving golf lessons, helping people, but really looking back, it was helping me more than I think it was helping them.
Wow, that is just a vivid example, man. It really is. And again, while like you say, some people might look at that and say it's just giving golf lessons, man. How hard
Yeah.
is it? No, it's the grind. It's the persistence. It's the resiliency. It's the building the muscle of doing what I've committed to do when I don't feel like doing it. Like
Hmm.
that in addition to the many things you named, the skills that you were forced to learn in the school of hard knocks out there,
Yeah.
right?
You know what? There were many young men um, who wanted to teach golf and so would work with me as an assistant for a while. And after a while, they would tire of it because it's just so hard, lesson after lesson. And again, I'm so thankful that everyone was interested in my take and we were able to help people. But there's an element of stick to itiveness that is huge, and then the ability to get yourself up for every event,
Yeah.
and no matter and look, it would be easy for an instructor, and I at that stage worked with a lot of PGA Tour and European Tour pros too. It would be easy to adrenalize for these guys and these girls because it's like all of a sudden your mind is stimulated by a higher speed problem where you got little Mr. Smith, who's a 24 handicapper, is wanting to learn the game. And the challenge there for me is to give every individual the same love, the same attention, the same
Mm.
communication, the same energy. And so from that point of view, it was hard work, but it was great work, and I look back on it fondly because it's molded me into what I am now.
Man, I love it. I love it. So insightful about your own experience, man. That's just gold.
Well,
So
here's a question for you. I mean,
sure.
I, I've often I travel, so I get time to think. I've often wondered because someone else could look upon that situation and go, "Well, that was a waste of time." So much of it is the attitude too, and the mindset to be able to look upon something and go, that played a part in who I am, and this played a part in who I am, because you've got to be in the right headspace to be able to, you know, take a prudent view of stuff and not an emotional view of events, whether they be good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more because it's some people seem to grow the skill of maybe starting down a path of, man, I hate this. This is terrible. I can't wait to get out of this. And they never learn anything from it. Some people just continue down that path. Some people start down that path and then they're able, whether it's through, somebody in their life or a circumstance or a situation that happens, they're actually then able to be reflective on that in the way you're showing right now. And I think in some ways that is a learned skill. It's forcing yourself into a contemplative and reflective kind of place. Personally, I think there's benefit to having coaches or somebody with some experience, mentors, somebody helping you think about what you've gone through in your life in a redemptive kind of way,
Yeah.
in a
Hmm.
restorative kind of way, as opposed to just I hated it, get past it, get over it. And the older we get, those of us that have some gray hair and years behind us a little bit now, you realize how much value there is in that reflection and how much your gratitude muscle grows when you're able to look at hardships as having been the seeds of the things you love now and the things that are beautiful
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, there's also that why me mentality that you get. I'm sure you see it a lot, and I definitely do, where it's easy to fall into that. You know, why is this happening to me? And that individual's got things coming easier, and he or she's being successful. Where it's if one can choose to look upon the thing not in a why me say sort of a mindset and go, well, lucky me. This is exactly what's supposed to be happening with me right now, and there's something that I'm supposed to glean out of this. And goodness knows, I'm going to try my damnedest to make sure that I come through here stronger than what I was when I entered this, whatever the situation might be.
Well, I think that's the opportunity. I think we can all grow in how quickly we sort of shift from why me to
Mm,
what next or what now or
yeah.
what can I take from this. Mark, man, we've had this is our third time to spend some time together, and the clock is my enemy every time I talk to you because there's far more things I want to dig into than what I feel like we have time to. So I'm gonna put a governor on myself. I'm gonna restrain a little bit here, just because I know you got a busy day, and we're all excited to get into this week's event. So I do a thing with all the guests that I interview. I call it the back nine, and it's
Mhm.
just sort of quick 9 questions, answers that come to mind off the top of your head. You can give a short answer. You can expound on it a little bit if you want to.
All right.
I always say, the Masters doesn't start till the back nine on Sunday, so this is the good stuff starts
hey,
now.
to
So
hey, to be correct, it's the second nine.
yes, that is very
That's
true.
the second nine.
That is the Augusta language, and
Mhm.
you better be careful with it, right?
Yeah.
So here's so we'll start back nine. Okay, no, first question: favorite thing you do with your daughters at this stage in their life? And I think your daughters are somewhere 12 and 8 or something,
12 and 8,
13,
yeah.
12 and 8. Okay.
12 and 8. This is a hard one because, the travel's had me away a bunch. But I would probably say, we go for Waffle House breakfast once in a while, and we always order the same thing. And it's just a time where we sort of connect a little bit,
I
because
love
it's
that.
easy to get wrapped up in the humdrum of life, where it's just no Tracy, it's just the girls and I, and we go to Waffle House.
Oh, that's a great answer. That's a great
Apart from
answer.
look, apart from I love to be sporty with my girls. They're both very athletic. I love to be involved with Isabel playing golf, and Sophia just wants to do it, but her and I find different things to do. So obviously that too, but I think the Waffle House deal is kind of fun.
It's so rich. I used to do a thing when my boys were growing up. We would call them fast Wednesdays, and fast was father and son time. And
All
a
right.
fast Wednesday was usually a breakfast at McDonald's before I dropped them off at school or something.
Cool.
And at the time, there's so many days where it's just, I'm looking at the clock like, oh, I got such a busy day, and I look back on it now and I think I don't remember anything I did in those days, but I
Yeah,
remember
man.
those breakfasts.
So true. So true. Oh goodness, you are lighting a fire under my rear end right now again, my friend.
All right, second question, and because I love talking about pressure and nerves and all that kind of stuff, and I believe the human experience is when we care about something or we want to do it well or it's a passion we have, there's just automatically pieces of nerves and anxiety and stuff that comes along with that. So as you've grown and progressed, your star is on the rise in the broadcasting world. You've got great new opportunities, and it's fun to watch the things that are happening for you. What would come to mind when I would ask you what's the most nervous moment you've had since you started broadcasting? Where have the nerves shown up for you in this sort of newish career that you're in?
Um, well, when you go on one of these shows, whatever it is, there's obviously there's the adrenaline going, and there's an excitability about it. But it was the PGA Championship um, at Bellerive, I believe. Yeah, at Bellerive, and it was Saturday on CBS, and I had the group of John Rahm and Dustin Johnson, and they were a couple off the lead. And we come on the air, and it's Jim Nance goes, "Hello, friends," and he's got Faldo and all the rest of it. And instead of the producer going through the intros and the teas and the titles and all sort of stuff. He goes, let's go straight to golf. And Jim quickly announces the announcers, and they come down to the first fairway where I was with my group. And with CBS, you have a monitor. And so the monitor lets you know exactly what the viewers are watching. Because like with PGA Tour Live, you don't have that luxury. So you got to pay attention. And then when they play recorded shots, you got to sort of just imagine what's going on. And the producer might cue you. So they come to me. And as they come to me, Jim sets up Dustin Johnson over a second. And I've looked at Dustin and I've got the idea. And I look at the monitor and that monitor goes down in front of me. And the screen just goes blank.
Of course.
And I say to my producer, I'm like, hey, I've lost the monitor. And I hear them saying, someone get out to go and help him. Second hole, still no monitor. And I've thankfully done recorded shots before. So I give something just, completely generic, nothing that, even though you might be looking at something else, I wasn't going to be not apropos. And the third hole was Vern Lundquist's hole. So I'm going from Nance to Lundquist. I mean, these are like the doyens of announcing, right? And then there's me with no monitor. And whoever it is hits a shot in there to a few feet, and I got the signal on the club, so I said, Vern, that's a 7-iron. And the individual, Charles Schwartzel, I think it was, hits it to about 3 feet. And Vern does Vern things, it just sounds like God in my ear. And so then they come to the green, and there's still no monitor, and they were now late because they've gone to commercial. And Vern just says to me, Mark, and I'm like, I don't know what he's watching. And right now my head is spinning. And I just remember saying to myself all the time, just call golf. You're just calling golf, right?
Oh, there you go.
You've done this 1,000 times before. And I say, Vern, a quality shot like that just deserves to be paid off. And Schwartzel I'll never forget it, as long as I live. And Schwartzel knocks it in, and Vern goes, Mark, you're right. He did. And he builds on this. And I felt okay. I still get goosebumps.
Wow.
Wow. And then fourth hole, the producer's like, is your monitor fixed? I'm like, still not. And then eventually on the fifth hole, they figure out what the problem was. And I get on the talk back to the producer. I'm like, I feel like Jesus has just arrived. I can see stuff on my monitor. And I actually heard the folks in the background in the truck laughing because the talk back comes over the speaker system in there. So it was, looking back, I was panic. I don't know if it was nervous, but I was panicking a bit. But I remember just trying to bring myself back to the thing, saying, just walk down the fairway, watch what they're doing, just call golf. And so looking back, I don't know if I was nervous, but there was panic stations going on for a little while.
Well, man, yeah, and you just gave us a great lesson in adapting to adversity that was unexpected. So
what play as little as possible, right?
Funny how that happens on the golf course for everybody, including the broadcasters.
It reminds me of my dad. My dad's always like, "You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason," because listen more than you talk.
There you go.
And that's the truth with announcers. I mean, if you don't have anything worthwhile to say, just don't say anything. Just don't. That's a random stuff.
So good, man. All right, third question, and I don't know if this is hard or not. I have a fundamental belief that part of the way God has wired us is with His image in us. Value and dignity is inherent; it's not earned; it's automatic. And I also believe that we are made to see and understand that potential value from an outside source, mirroring that back to us in some way. I think God wants to do that for us, but I think there's also people He brings into our path. So all that set up for this question, who would be for you a person who saw value and potential in you in any area and really called it out into being in a way that you saw it, like wow, I could do that. I could be that, or he believes in me. Like who would be a person in younger Mark's life that helped you start to believe in you?
My wife, Tracy, categorically. I mean, she's always seen something bigger inside than I probably did. I mean, she basically professed over me when we started dating that I ought to be in TV. So certainly Tracy, and then my college coach, Dr. Earl Bagley. I love the man like a father. He We see the world from different prisms. Politically, we oppose each other, but otherwise, he has been such a great mentor in my life, and he's got this calm, easy way about him where he just will say something, just like he says the right
Love it.
thing, and it allows me to access something else. So certainly Tracy, and then Dr. Bagley too, and
Oh, I love it.
parents aside, but I would say those two are
I
huge. Have
I
had a
love it.
huge impact.
Love it, love it. I love meeting another card carrying member of the Married Way Outside Our League club.
Yeah, it's true. This is true. Like I said, it was the smartest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I hear you, man. All right, I know you're a coffee lover and I know you're a
Yeah,
wine lover. So red wine or white wine and anything specific is your go-to.
any wine, but but I'll gravitate to red. And I like something that's sort of. I love I love structure of a wine. I like the fullness of the feeling inside of my mouth. So I'm not necessarily full bodied like Cabernets and stuff like that, but anything that's got a little fruit about it, and certainly that structure, that velvety sort of sensation.
I love it. That's awesome. Fifth question. One really, for anybody that doesn't know, Mark grew up in, you mentioned South Africa, and you came up as a golfer in South Africa, and the Gary Player influence was strong in your country, and one of the greats of all time, both as a person and as a golfer. So, what would be one really memorable thing you learned from Gary Player growing up in South Africa?
Well, just open disclosure. I mean, I never knew Gary when I was young. When I was a young amateur golfer, I got to meet him later in life, and the one thing I've learned from Mr. Player is just he's got this can-do attitude. You know, anything's possible, and the belief in himself and the belief in his faith is strong. He's strong with that guy, and one of the great things he's ever said to me, and it framed me a bit as an instructor. One day he was playing a practice round with Trevor, I think it was, and I was working with Trev. And Gary comes up to me, and, you know, he always puts his arm around you when he talks to you, and he goes, Mark, Trevor's swinging so well. You've done a great job. I'm like, thank you, Mr. Player. And he goes, but just one thing. He goes, you're a great instructor, but I'll only take a lesson from you when you can beat me. And I was like, okay. But you know what? There's such wisdom in that. When I look back on it at the time, I was like, come on, really? But there's such wisdom in that, because what he was essentially saying to me is that it's more to it than just golf swing instruction. There's a playing element that every great mentor, instructor, coach, whatever you want to call a person, is able to bring. And so that framed me as a golf instructor to say, hey, it's not just about the golf swing. It's the X's and the O's. It's this holistic thing that is brought to bear. And so I think Gary, in a funny sort of a way, had an influence on that.
I love it. I love it when people drop wisdom on you, and years
You don't
later
know
it explodes.
Yeah, no.
That's awesome. All right, number 6. You may or may not. I don't even know. I have no idea if this would apply to you or not. But do you have any rituals or closest thing to a ritual that you do before a big broadcast, or you just don't feel ready to go? Like I got a routine and I got to hit this, or I'm not ready.
Yeah, I pray, and I try my very best to pray in the spirit and just say, hey God, I'm here. I'm the clay. You're the potter. Just fill me up with
Oh, so
with
good.
your spirit. And I always I don't know if it's conscious. Obviously, it's not conscious, but I'm like, just let me reflect you. Whatever I say, let it be not me, and let it be you.
Love it. Love it. Number 7. Thank you for your time, man. This is so much fun. So,
Sure.
number 7, you're a world traveler. You travel a lot, been all over. Favorite place you've ever been that wouldn't automatically be at the top of everybody else's list?
Wow, that's a great question. I'd have to say Florence in Italy. I know that sounds a bit obnoxious, but honestly, I mean that area. with the statue of David there and the Uffizi and all of these magnificent sculptures and stuff, and
Oh,
Tuscany
cool.
just down the road. Florence has got to be on one's list. So Florence, and then look, Pebble Beach is on the top of everyone's list. I mean, that place is super, super special. But I would say
Yeah.
Florence. I love Italy. I love the people. I love the culture. I love just everything about it.
Great answer. Marry your red wine with Florence. You're having a good day, right?
That's true. Yeah.
All right, number 8. As you've mentioned a couple times, and you probably get asked this ad nauseum in some way. So you're the coach and an older brother of 2008 Masters champion Trevor Immelman. When you try to describe to people the combination role of older brother and coach, especially maybe even back when he was playing at that level, what would be a word or two that would come to mind that you would say, this is a tricky thing to explain how the older brother relationship and the coach relationship marry together, but this word might at least get in the ballpark?
Yikes. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. And speaking along the not sure lines, you have to, one has to be okay with saying I don't know, because I think when you do that, then you can still be older brother or dad or whatever the case might
There
be.
you go. Yeah.
It's, as the coach, you look to for answers, and that may be why Trevor and I have been together and split and been together and split. But there's times when I've had the answer, but maybe not the wisdom to be able to deliver it in the way that it needed to be done. And so I was okay with saying, look, I don't know. Let's try this out. And so I would say just a certain amount of humility and understanding of personal dynamics, to not be bombastic about stuff, because how easily sibling stuff can happen. And so I think if you're the coach and the older brother, or the coach and the dad, or whatever, just to be a little humble about what you're doing, because it can easily go wrong, because emotions are high, as we all know in sports, and when things are going wrong, stuff gets on edge a little quickly. So I would say comfortability with saying I don't know, and just being humble enough to be able to admit it.
Rich advice, man. Rich advice. So, maybe the Harmons are the first family of golf instruction. I don't know. I think I was listening to you and your brother interact with each other on the broadcast last weekend, and I thought, the Immelmans are on the fast track to being the first family of broadcasters.
Well, there's no doubt that we could be very successful together, because we both understand each other. We've been through the highest of pressures together, and there's that immeasurable sort of bond that is, because a lot of broadcast and a lot of success is not unity, but just harmony, I guess. And there's an understanding there that it takes a long time for people that aren't relatives to build. Yeah, that's why with certain broadcast teams that have been together for such a long time, they know each other. They can sort of finish each other's sentences. When someone starts talking, they know where the individual's going. When someone stops, they know they've stopped. They don't have to cue someone. And with Trevor, there's that naturally built in.
That's awesome. It's like a rhythm and a dance to it, right? Yeah. You learn that rhythm. That's so good. My last question, and again, Mark, you've been super generous with your time, man. This is never enough time for me, but thank you so much. I ask everybody this question in some form. It's my favorite question. I've had many guests who don't know an answer, so no pressure.
Well, there you go.
You're off the hook if you don't know. You wouldn't be the first one. So here's my question. If somebody on your golf team, or for you, maybe your broadcast team, or maybe even your daughters, were to use a word or a phrase that everybody else would know they were imitating Mark, what word or phrase would they likely use that they hear from you all the time?
Well, I know you picked up on a few that I use.
I was going to say, you steal one of the ones I got from you.
my college team, well, to this day, will tell you that I will say to them, a short pencil is better than a long memory. My daughters, my girls, there's a few things that I'll say to them. I know, well, yeah, I'll always say to them, you have greatness inside of you. So maybe if you had to ask them, they'd say that. Apart from, pick up your clothes off the ground, or finish your food, eat your broccoli.
Of course.
So I think from the team's point of view, I've got my isms, and one of those is short pencil and long memory.
I
So
love
don't
it, man.
confuse those.
I love it. I love the question. I love seeing people just try to wrestle with the answer, and most people come up with something. And it's interesting.
Oh, yes, one. Yes, one to that. All the golfers on the PGA Tour. Henrik Stenson started it. Stenson, Paul Casey, everyone. When they see me, they're like, how's it? Because how's it is a South African way of greeting. And when you listen to my podcast, you'll hear me go, how's it? It's Mark Immelman. So how's it is my thing as well. People had T-shirts made that say how's it on the front of it. And it's spelled Howzit.
Howzit. Well, as you know, I'm connected with some South African golfers, so
yeah.
I think I probably have a one-on-one this week with one of them. I think I'm gonna lead with that.
He'll know exactly what you're saying.
I gotta write it down. HOWZIT.
ZIT. Or Z for South African.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. Well, Mark, this is so much fun, man. Thank you again. You are a special guy. You've got a lot to offer. We're hearing that on the weekends, and that's fun. But I like what you have to offer with your life and your experience and your insights and who God's wired you to be and the journey that you're on. And I'm richer for the interactions, man, every single time. Tell the listeners just a little bit about how they can find you online, your platforms, that kind of stuff.
There's a website, markimmelman.com. It's MARKIMMELMAN. And then social media, it's all Mark_Immelman. And the podcast On the Mark is available wherever you get yours. Just search On the Mark Golf.
Yeah.
And Columbus, if you go to Columbus State University, or I think it's columbusstateuniversity.edu, you can find me there too.
Wonderful. Yeah. Can't recommend the podcast highly enough. Your level of guests dropped significantly this week, but other than that,
please. That thing's doing very, very well. There's a real desire. I sense this. And maybe it's because people know that, coming to our place is where they'll get all sorts of information. But I sense a real desire in golfers and fans to be able to understand the inner workings of the golfer, not just the hands on the feet stuff.
Good.
So no, yours has been doing great.
Well, thank you for, carrying that flag in the golf world. I think you're one of the people that really is championing that move. And I don't think it's necessarily new, but I think we are on the precipice of a new emphasis in that space within the game. I hope that's true.
It is. I think it is. There's no doubt it's true, because in this information age, people will quickly find that all the best launch monitor numbers in the world amount to absolutely nothing when you're on the 16th hole or your club championship or whatever, and you've got to get the ball into the hole as quickly as you can. Golf, the shadow side of golf that's what it's about: getting the ball into the hole as quickly as you can with as little damage as you can, and no amount of data parameters and stuff in practice are going to help you. Will help you with that when the pressure's up.
That's why we still love the game, man. That's why we love it.
True.
All right, Mark, thank you so much. Appreciate it. It was awesome.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.